Guten Erev Shabbos. When you think of family, what do you think of? Is it a bunch of people scattered far and wide around the globe who get together only rarely, except maybe on Facebook or Zoom? Or do you think of nuclear family living under one roof who spend part of every day together, in some form or another? Growing up, we lived far away from almost all our family members except two of my grandparents. And my grandfather would always joke, happiness is a close knit family 3,000 miles away, probably quoting George Burns. There are many funny quips about family that express certain truths, as any joke can. They say that some family trees produce more nuts than others. Someone called Lois Y said, a person truly becomes a grandmother the day she no longer notices the terrible things her children do because she's so enchanted by the wonderful things her grandchildren are doing. Clint Eastwood said, marriages are made in heaven, but then again, so are thunder and lightning. No less an authority on family than William, Prince of Wales, once said, I learned from an early age, do not mess with your grandmother. This is all worth thinking about because there's a lot of talking about families in our portion of Pinchas this week, just as there is throughout all of the Chumash. Of course, the whole first book of Bereshis, Genesis, is about family dynamics. It starts out with Cain killing Hevel, Cain killing Abel, which shows us how bad things can turn, how quickly. Thankfully, it does get better from there. From there onwards in human history, sometimes people want to kill their siblings, but for the most part, they hold off. Even as Joseph's brothers changed their plot from murder to selling their brother Joseph into slavery, we learn by the end of Genesis that Joseph forgives them and they're able to live peaceably together, which was not always the case. This is what we're aiming for, to be able to live peaceably with our family members, even when we don't always agree. At the beginning of Parshas Pinchas, there's a listing of each family by tribe and by clan with a census attached. Not the first time we're seeing this. And that's all about apportioning the land of Israel. Once we get into the land of Israel and conquer it and settle it, we're going to divide up the land and work it and live off it and hopefully do so in peace. There's an important element in this equation to consider, which is that the Levite tribe would not be working the land or even receiving a share, their own portion of the land. Rather, the rest of the Jewish people, we would support them through a system of tithing. Ideally, this would get the message through our heads that those of us with more will have to adjust our perspective a bit and be okay with, even be happy with, sharing with those of us who have less. The Torah never advocates or expects that there should be a perfectly egalitarian society, but rather that everyone should be able to live in dignity and sustenance without humiliation or resentment. When we talk about whether we are one people or one nation or one tribe or one faith, really none of those is a perfect description, it seems. As we know, 90+% of us either live in Israel or in North America, by which we mean Canada and the US. Mexico's Jewish community is roughly the size of Thornhill and Markham. And as we've been seeing lately, Jews here and Jews in Israel see things differently. We speak a different language. We are asked to make different sacrifices to be part of our society. Here in Canada, just to give one example, we're not asked to send our kids, our children, into the army after high school. We don't necessarily practice our religious commitment all in the same way, not even everybody in the same neighborhood or synagogue or city. If you go by intermarriage statistics or synagogue memberships or day school enrollment figures, we aren't necessarily one nation. Who would we consider in, who would we consider out, varies depending on whom you ask. So then, what are the Jews? A family, maybe. A family seems like the best description. A family with all its long-standing memory and seething resentments and blood loyalty and tribalism and all the other wonderful things that come with it. Just to highlight two amazing branches on our family tree that come up in this week's portion. For those of you willing to subscribe to this view of the Jews as a family, first one is the daughters of Tzlofchad, mentioned in our parsha this week. You may not be surprised to learn that inheritance of the land of Israel, once we came in and settled the land, was patrilineal, meaning it went through the fathers. Now, if you're going to get upset at that, keep in mind that in Western civilization, as it's so charmingly called, this is how things worked until the 1870s, just 150 years ago. But one group in our Jewish family, thousands of years ago, quickly noticed that if this were the rule, their own family would receive no portion of the land whatsoever, because Tzlofchad had no sons. So the five daughters, who were called Machla, Noah, Chagla, Milcah, and Tirzah, approached Moshe Rabbeinu with their question, which they wisely worded in the same way as those who advocated for Pesach Sheni. They said, Lama Nigara, why should we miss out? Our father had no sons, and with this rule, our family will have no portion in the land. Moshe said, good point, and asked God, who said their question is a great question. Indeed, they should have a share in the land as well. For those who follow the details, there's a larger than usual nun in the verse, which the Gemara explains that to mean that Moshe Rabbeinu understood the 49 levels of wisdom, but not the 50th. Nun is 50. The 50th level of wisdom. For that, even our greatest rabbi still had to ask the boss. From this, we certainly learn to ask for what we need, and we also learn that nobody, not even Moshe Rabbeinu himself, has all the answers ready in his pocket. The other person worth mentioning is Serach, or another person worth mentioning is Serach bat Asher. She's an amazing personality. Those of you who are keeping score as to how many women get prominent mention in the Torah, she is one of them. She's mentioned twice. Midrash explains one of her most famous moments. She gently and calmly sang a poem to Yaakov, to Jacob, to explain to him that not only was his son Joseph still alive, but he was going to see him soon. Yaakov's sons were afraid that the shock of this news would be too traumatic for their father to withstand, so they arranged to have Serach convey the news in this way. Ramban explained that Serach lived through the entire Egyptian exile, so she had some memories from Jacob, from Yaakov, that no one else had. When it came time to leave Egypt, some of us weren't quite sure if Moses was the real thing or maybe fake news. Ramban says that they consulted with Serach, and she confirmed that indeed Moshe Rabbeinu was the real deal. She remembered where Joseph was buried in the Nile River, many other things that make her a great figure, a key figure in Jewish history. Here in our precious Kehillah, we often talk about the KST family, the extended KST family. Hopefully that is an entree to talk more about the extended Jewish family. When we talk about solidarity with or prayers for our brothers and sisters in Israel, it's not a metaphor. We mean it. Many of us have siblings in Israel, as in they come from the same parents. All of us have family there. And in my family, there were sometimes disagreements, there were sometimes squabbles over trivial things, but the overall reality remains that we are a family and we're connected by the deepest and most essential bonds of all that entails. Disagreements we will always have, but that's because we talk to each other, we share space, and we care passionately and deeply about the same things almost all of the time. No one should be able to separate us one from the other because, in essence, we really are all one. That, as much as anything else, is key for us to remember to give us strength in challenging times. Shabbat Shalom.